So here we are on day 2. So we're really excited to have both of you here to have a conversation about this amazing film. And I'm going to sort of start the conversation, and we'll talk a little bit about that, and then we'll drop out a little bit for David and I and have Barrington and Fab Five Freddy have a conversation. But I just wanted to open it up and just say, what an incredible way to bring art to a space where everyone can feel comfortable watching it and understanding it and enjoying it. So I loved the way that you, David, shot it, and the way that you, Fab Five, really sort of educated me, and I'm sure everyone who watched this, so much on something that I didn't really think much about in looking at Renaissance art. So can you talk a little bit about how the two of you came together, and how you sort of pulled this off, especially riding around Florence on horseback?
Would you like me to start, Fab? And
absolutely, yeah. I think David should start, and you can jump in as appropriate. You know,
well, I'll try to. There's no super duper short way of telling the story.
Okay.
So I don't want to eat up any of Barrington and Fab's time, but I had the fabulous pleasure of meeting Fab originally on a documentary I made a couple of years back about Jean-Michel Basquiat, and I managed to twist Fab's arm to convince him to be in it. And he did such a wonderful job communicating the era, communicating his friendship with Jean-Michel. But we also spent a day at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, and Fab was reliving the weekly museum club kind of phenomenon that he experienced with Jean-Michel. Every week they'd take a taxi up to the Met and explore the art, and Fab kind of relived that experience. And he would go to a Picasso, or would go to a Jackson Pollock, or would go to a Caravaggio. And Fab would just riff. I mean, it was just, and I didn't even know what to expect. I mean, it wasn't like, so Fab, what are you going to say when we get to the Met and we're standing in front of, Caravaggio, Judith and Holofernes? What are you going to say? I didn't know. It was just like we were just going to try to have fun, and Fab was fantastic, and that's where the international art education program by Fab Five Freddy began.
I think I'll jump in here. I'll take the baton because that's what it was. So just to go back a little bit. So Jean-Michel Basquiat was a good friend of mine. Mm-hmm. We came up on the New York downtown scene together. And hit the ground at the same time. We had shared ideas, and as a young kid coming from Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn, Jean from another part of Brooklyn, meeting him and somebody my age at that time, and we were just basically 19 or 20, that knew about these artists that I knew about. I used to cut school and just go to museums a lot, exploration visits. Jean did the same thing. So we had this shared interest, and kind of like an early self-taught awareness of like art history. So, and then we became really good friends, both making moves. Sadly, Jean died way too young, but definitely left a strong mark. So people, like everybody doing something on Jean wants me to take part. I've done it several times, a few docs and stuff, but I'm like, wait a minute, we're not gonna just keep doing this. So with David, that was the reason of the reluctance, but when the idea came up that David was aware that we had done this together. It wasn't every Wednesday, but quite often on a Wednesday when we would decide this was our museum club, and we'd go to museums and we'd have fun, and we'd talk about art like in our own way, and like claim things and things that were obvious but were not talked about in the history, like when Picasso saw African art is when modern art really is invented. And then Damsels d'Avignon, like, is that painting? So this stuff is elementary, but once again, not as discussed. And so when David was like, hey, what about we can recreate that? And so that got me excited to do the Met. And I put a little flavor in the way I would talk about these painters in a way that, you know, you just don't really get. Boom. And that's part of how me and Jean-Michel would talk about art. Like, you know, we would make it whatever it was. We were going to put our own spin on it or whatever. So that's why I like and did that with David. And then David amazingly won the award in London, in England for the best documentary of the year. And then came and pitched me to go look at the art of the Renaissance because, you know, I guess people kind of liked the way I broke it down. And I knew that there were Black folks that I'd see in paintings. In fact, one of the paintings that I look at the Met, there's a painting from the Renaissance time period, but there's a young Black child in the painting. And we've seen these images before. And I comment, oh, that's a nicely painted young Black kid, you know, no character, stereotyped depiction of a Black image, something that we've come to be very familiar with. And so, boom, when I said that would be more interesting to me is to look at the fact that there's Black folks in these paintings, very little scholarship, because the BBC was like, hey, you know, we want to do this again. And David was down. I said, man. And so we began like a sort of a collaboration at that point on the ideas of this research. And David, you know, the BBC has done this many times. David and the research assistant, the cat that was like on our team, I'm sure David remembers his name.
Yeah, Eddie Knox.
Eddie Knox, man, these guys have been to Florence, worked on many other docs, but David really wanted to flip the script and not do this in the typical kind of way that these art, academic, historical BBC things. And David had all these ideas that he kept throwing at me, and riding a horse was a very good idea.
Where did that come from? Why did you say, David, I have a great idea. Why don't we put that on a horse?
The horse was before, you have to put it in context. We made the film, I think, in 2017.
Right.
Sat on a BBC shelf for like 9 months before they broadcast it. And it was done before Urban Cowboy. It was done before it was way ahead of the curve. It was a very, very, very simple concept. Why not look at 15th century Renaissance art in 15th century style? Simple as that. And how would you do that? You do it on horseback. But in the context of British television, I was just sick and tired of looking at arts programs where the presenter is riding around Florence, traveling on a train, reading excerpts of Vasari, or, you know, it's just like, oh man, I could not do that. I don't want to work with a presenter who's riding in a car or on a train or on a motorbike, you know, reading excerpts of Vasari. And so anyway, I wanted to do it very differently. And the production manager didn't think I was serious when I said, I'd like to look into possibly doing this on horseback. And when
of course not.
she thought I was joking. And then she almost had a heart attack when I said, no, I'm not joking. And well, to make a short story long, but so we began a process of looking into all the layers, the bureaucratic levels of getting permits and permissions, etc.
Right.
Fab probably, I don't think had ever ridden a horse before, really. And so I made a trip to Florence, to Italy, to actually meet and audition the horse, because I was very worried that we find the calmest, most rough, scareable horse. And I met Palomo, who is the horse, and I was convinced that Palomo was cool and calm and could handle anyone.
And was Fab convinced when he got one? When he got on him.
And then we built in about 2 or 3 hours that morning, Fab.
Yeah. So what happened was, I'll jump in for a minute because, you know, it was, you know, David asked, I told David, I said, yeah, I've done it, but I haven't done it in a while. But yes, I've ridden a horse. And I said, but listen, can you get, you know, we talked about getting a nice tame horse and we'd work that into the schedule. Personally, I felt bad. I had tried to ride a horse sometime before in the early 2000s. I was, interestingly, on a ranch in the middle of Las Vegas, believe it or not. And this buddy of mine was doing he's like this black cowboy guy that was, and I was watching him do all this stuff. And he said, man, I want to get on. He says, man, come on, get on. And I was terrified because I just was not prepared and I needed to ease into this. So I felt really bad over the years that I wanted to get, you know, I wanted to do this horse thing. And so when David said that to me, I said, yes, this is going to be my opportunity. And what was amazing is that morning we had a couple of hours to get the kinks out in kind of right outside of Florence. It literally was like riding a bike, and the trainer was really calm, and they just walked me around for about close to an hour. And then at a certain point, I found my balance. I just got it. And that began this whole entire day. Now, David had a shot set up at this location, which had a spectacular view of the city of Florence. And one of the shot ideas was for me it kind of was on an incline. So I'm just now getting comfortable on level ground. And I was kind of not ready for that. So David quickly scratched it and came up with other great ideas. And
I pat myself
going
on the
down,
back.
maybe going up, so it's not so scary when you're going down.
It was quite an achievement.
It was the one shot I was like, you know, you as a
your money shot.
You become obsessed with, oh, I want that shot. Fab. And in the background is Florence, and you see the dome and you see the bell tower, and that's the shot. And I didn't, you know, when Fab, it was amazing to see Fab in the space of about an hour and a half go from a terrified expression and a rigid body on that horse.
You're up so high is the reality. If you've never done it, you all of a sudden are sitting 6-7 feet up.
Yeah.
Well, you're on cobblestone.
With nothing to hold on to.
You're not even on the grass.
Yeah, I mean, it's just finding your balance is the thing, and getting comfortable on the horse. And it was amazing. Even though the trainer didn't speak English, I really got, and she was like, if I did anything wrong, if I held the reins too tight, she would, no. But sure enough, I got comfortable with the horse and had little carrots to give him little munchies as we, you know, it was such a fun experience.
It came across that way. It came across that way, and as the viewer, we saw you looked really natural. You looked like you had a relationship with the horse, and I couldn't help but make, you know, some Kehinde Wiley references, that's. It was almost like a reinforcement of that theme.
Well, I'm going to tell you right now, it's so amazing. Kehinde Wiley, I know, and we'd originally talked to Kehinde. He was supposed to have been in the film, and I was quite upset the way that didn't work out as planned. But anyway, it's interesting that you say that, because we had planned on, you know, talking with him to, you know, because for the obvious reason that you mentioned him. So, but anyway, but still, we plowed on. It was such an amazing, I mean, David and the team, the research, I must say, was so well done, and getting a balance of people. I'm sure David could elaborate, because that amazing Italian, woman,
my gosh. She was amazing.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
People love her.
I was going to mention that. I'm like, can I go take her class? Can I the people that you had in this film, besides Fab, of course, but the research, I didn't even know that this Ethiopian Italian woman, that's what I love about this film too. I learned so much from looking at art now, looking at Renaissance art in a different way, but also hearing these researchers and experts speak on this who are Black. I loved it. It was amazing.
Ijaba was really she was so so great and so lucky for us to get her. And this is just really a number of things just sort of miraculously came together in a very inauspicious beginning. Our very first day of production was in Brooklyn, and our very first day of filming was going to be with Kehinde Wiley. He was going to be at his studio in Brooklyn, and the purpose of and he said he'd be happy to be in it, was to talk about the historical role of the portrait and how the portrait of the Renaissance meant something very different than the portrait today. And he might be working on something of his at the time. And, I'm going to say this, we show up at his studio and there's no Kehinde Wiley. And not only is he not there, he's still in California. And we basically got stood up by Kehinde. And he barely apologized for standing us up. So it's unfortunate that he didn't get to be in the film, but I feel it's kind of his loss to not be in the film. With regard to Ijaba, we tried on 2 separate days in Florence to meet with her. She wasn't well.
No,
we tried to meet her in Florence. We tried to meet her in Venice.
And both,
and
right.
She wasn't well, but she wanted to be in the film. That was the end of her being in the film. We were back in London. But about 3 or 4 weeks after we got back, I just gave her a call to see if she's okay. I mean, she wasn't well. She clearly was ill. I just asked her, how, I hope you're all right and hope you're feeling better. She says, yes, I'm feeling better. And by the way, I'll be in London in 2 days.
Wow.
To attend a literary festival. So we got her in.
Yeah, that was really very incredible. Really incredible.
Yeah, she was great. And just the fact that it was something for me, just having been that kid that spent so much time in museums and looking at so many images. And then you see Black people in these images, and it was just like, wait a minute, who is this guy? And then that was the fun part. And David and the team, once again, really dived in, and we spent that summer leading up. And then thank God, even though it was sizable crowds, especially when I spent that entire day on a horse getting those shots, moving around Florence, still a lot of tourists. But David had been and explained in terms of scheduling, we will go in the fall, which will still be substantial, but it was 10x worse in the months of summer. So we spent that time back and forth with images and stories that it was so illuminating to learn. And especially the fact that the book on one of the Medicis, Alejandro de Medici, who was Black and ruled Florence, that book had recently been published, which was a perfect tie-in, and the author took part. So it was really great. It was so much fun, so much.
Yeah, and it's just a great film for schools like Barrington. Like, I'm just thinking like for kids to watch, to understand, because it's it's true. You walk by these paintings and you're like, someone didn't just put this person in there. That was somebody. So let's find out who that person was, and just to actually unearth all that history is really amazing.
Yeah.
So before we move on to the next phase of our conversation, I'm just wondering, where else are you going to be riding horseback?
Well, I was so enthralled by the ability, by pulling it all off. In terms of essentially my first time on a horse, and I spend it all day in Florence among many tourists that just would occasionally, quite frequently, people would do this double take and be like, yo, like, is that you? It's like, what are you doing in the middle of Florence? Fab Five. It was really a surreal, fun experience. So I really want to take a ride again, and I'll probably try to do that this summer. I wanted to do it, but COVID, stopped all activity, so.
Well, the answer is I'm not sure. where Fab will ride again, but I certainly hope he will. It was called Fresh Guide to have the sort of the ring of a franchise. You know, Fresh Guide to Florence, Fresh Guide to,
that's what I was hoping.
To the Harlem Renaissance, Fresh Guide to the untold history of Black Britain, Fresh Guide to this, Fresh Guide to that. And the BBC is sort of considering various possibilities, and there are several proposals that have been prepared that are being considered. And it's just been very, very slow in decision making on the broadcaster's end. But the BBC loved the film, and it just did extremely well. And they, so they, the Harlem Cowboy will ride again. Yes, well,
we are looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to to viewing art that way. I think it was excellent, and it was really well done, and it was very.
I just want to say, I'm sure you guys are aware, but I'm in this exhibit at the Boston Museum of Fine Arts.
You are, and that's where we're doing our festival with the Boston Museum of Fine Arts.
Wow. And so that's the show. If anybody in the area hasn't seen it yet, it's titled Writing the Future, Basquiat and the Hip Hop Generation, which is Jean-Michel's paintings, myself, Futura, Lee Quinones, a group of us that were really kind of had come off of painting on the trains, and we're exhibiting all at the same time, all in a really good show. And so I'm planning to come up there soon to actually see that. And so, yeah.
Oh, we hope you do. We hope you do. That's a perfect transition for your conversation with Barrington. So David, we're going to sign off. Thank you so much. Thank you for joining us from London at 2 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, great to see you, David.
Great to see you, Gab, and hope to see you soon. And Lisa, Barrington, thanks for the invite, and I'm pleased that you enjoyed the film, and just great to talk with you.
I loved it, and I'm waiting for the next installment.
All right.
Ooh, see you, David. Good seeing you, man.
I'll talk to you soon, Fab. I'll give you a ring.
Take care.
All right.